If you like what you see in the video, please leave a like and subscribe, it really helps me out, and maybe check out my Patreon and social media in the description. So my video on PewDiePie did pretty well. I think it's nearing 13,000 views, and it was a pretty positive reception. I posted it on Reddit as well, and it got a couple thousand upvotes there, and it got more likes and dislikes, which is actually quite an achievement when you're dealing with a fan base like PewDiePie's. Now, obviously my video was criticising his comments on mass immigration in Sweden, and I was trying to explain why it's bad to use this term and why I believe when someone like him uses it, it is really framing the whole discussion in an alt-right way, I guess. So, if you didn't know, I think, and I think it's true, that using immigration, migrant crisis instead of refugee crisis is what the alt-right like to use, and the alt-right playbook, that somehow that migrants just one day up and decided, right, let's all just move to Europe and Scandinavia for no reason, I just feel like it really, and let's go in there and, according to the alt-right, let's just replace everyone, let's destroy Western culture, because of course we can't assimilate to Western values. We can't just be normal human beings. We just got to go there and take over. That is the alt-right narrative, and that's what I think my migrant crisis plays into. Now, I've experienced this before, but lots of his fans came in to defend PewDiePie. He's not racist, he's not a Nazi, he's not all these things. But again, like I've experienced in the past, it seems strange they come in, and to defend him for being racist, they essentially either use racist arguments or are just flat out racist. So I'm going to get into a lot of these comments. So the first one is a guy called Especially Cared For, who said, "Bro, what the F are you even trying to prove? We know PewDiePie is a covert alt-righter. We love him." So if this comment is memeing or trying to provoke me or something, it doesn't really matter. I think what it reflects is a broader thing you see in the alt-right community. They like PewDiePie because he helps push their narratives, he helps get people into their pipeline, he brings on people like Ben Shapiro, his favourite author is a Japanese fascist, he really helps, there's a good video called, I think it's the PewDie Pipeline, of how this guy sort of indoctrinates young kids into following a path online that could see them become part of the alt-right. And it's not surprising that the alt-right is heavily made up of gamers and is influenced by gamer culture. But yeah, that is just one comment. So the next one is some guy just saying, "Nah, dude, we just don't want migrants, especially Africans, regardless of how they act and what their values are." So that's just flat out racist, and it's not surprising people like him, who just commented, like PewDiePie. Someone else saying, "No, you have to accept thousands of refugees into your country, otherwise we'll call you racist. They can go fuck themselves, Lamau. Thank God I live in a 99% white country." Now, in my discussion on refugees, I don't think I really made this argument that you're racist if you don't accept them, even though I do believe that most countries, pretty much all countries who are super anti-accepting refugees, are some of the most racist ones. So Hungary is a good example, one of the most racist in Europe, really won't accept refugees, closed its borders. America is another one, even though in the past they've been pretty good with accepting refugees. Under Trump, they've pretty much stopped accepting Syrian refugees, despite having a hand in the destabilisation of that region. So yes, I do believe most people pretty much all people who don't accept refugees are racist, especially when they're from countries that aren't white as well. And obviously countries like America have a history. Think of the Holocaust, they turned away loads of Jews who were fleeing the Nazis and they went back to their country. So Anne Frank's family actually went to America, got rejected, had to go back to Holland, and we all know what happened to all of her family apart from her dad who survived the war. Now, they're the more flat out racist people. But there's other things I want to get into here as well. So I posted this video on Reddit, it did pretty well, but I also got PewDiePie fans there, and a lot of them were using these alt-right narratives about migration. So someone says, "I'm curious on what people think about the no-go zones in Sweden and the mass sexual assaults in Cologne, Germany during the height of illegal immigration, and the Asian gangs in Calgary. From my education in college, I learned that mass migration often causes troubles for local communities, because my Vietnamese dad said that when he went to Calgary, the majority of drug-related gang activity in Calgary was by Asians calling themselves fresh off the boat, and because my dad was Asian, he was involved in some of their activities." So a few things to unpack here. So basically, no-go zones is bullshit. I can tell you as someone who went to school in one of the most non-white areas of the UK, and places that Fox News and other outlets talk about being no-go zones where you just can't go if you're white. And if you're white, there's some sort of, little militia who's going to scare you away. No, it just doesn't exist. In terms of the crime thing, here's another problem I have. It goes into the discourse of a lot of things, People cannot separate poverty from somehow refugees, migrants, or different races, right? So the reason, if this guy's story is anecdotal story is true, the reason that there might be immigrants, communities, or people like that who do crime, even when they come over to these countries, is because they're so poor. Crime is a poverty thing. In America, there's this racist narrative, black people do more crime because of their culture. Ben Shapiro blames it on things, right, like rap music, all these different cultural things. Of course, why certain groups do crime is because of poverty. So if you take the UK, in areas that are more diverse, a lot of the time, the people who aren't white are in poorer communities, and that sometimes ends up in more crime happening in those areas. If you go outside of the cities in the UK, you go to places in the southeast, you go to places on the coast, of course, the people doing the crime in these areas are the poor white people, where they make up more of the population there. It's just a poverty thing. So you see all these films about, Italian migrants, obviously the famous gangster films, and Irish mobsters in America. It's just a classic narrative. They don't normally get involved with crime because Irish people or Italians like crime more. It's because they are poor immigrants to these countries, don't have many opportunities, are institutionally oppressed in most cases. So what opportunities do you have to feed your family? All these different types of thing. That's why people get involved in organised crime. Not because, like this guy seems to suggest, that immigrants just somehow like crime better. But again, that's a narrative that extends beyond immigration. Like I said, Ben Shapiro talking about rap music and black culture promoting crime, rather than institutional, historic oppression creating loads and loads of poverty. And of course, poverty is a breeding ground for crime. That's just the simple economics of it. And like I said, you don't need to be a certain colour skin to be more predisposed to crime. Like, I even need to say that. It's actually all an economic issue. So here's another racist guy saying, you guys actually have no idea what's going on in Sweden. I can tell you it's actually a very real, devastating problem that people are afraid to talk about, because virtue signalling Americans who have no idea what's happening try to label us as racist for discussing it. The rape frenzy is not a myth, it's a very real and is only the tip of the iceberg. There is also a massive gang war between competing gangs consisting exclusively of foreigners in every major city, from the quietest, most peaceful major cities in Europe to war zones, shootings almost daily, bombings, stabbings, mob fights. These are not myths, these are reality now. All because we tried to help refugees. We can't even try to assimilate them without being labelled perpetrators of cultural genocide, whatever that is. We have a very serious problem, and meanwhile the West denies it's happening at all to preserve their nonsense fantasy narrative. So this guy goes beyond Sweden, says every major city in Europe has been turned into a war zone. Again, as someone who lives in one of the most famous cities in Europe, this is bullshit. If there was mass shootings, bombings, all this stuff going on all the time, you would hear about it on the news, right? Bombings especially. If a group of refugees who happen to be Islamic do a bombing, you think that's not going to be world news. Again, that's the way our media is skewed. When something is done by Islamic terrorists, it is all across the front page of every newspaper. And I just don't buy this for a second. And as a guy who lives in a massive city, a major European city, it hasn't turned into a war zone because of the refugee crisis. So again, more racist narratives. Based on anecdotal evidence, they just jump on something, they take one example. It's like with Trump in America. If an illegal immigrant kills someone who's American, he just paints that as every single person. It's just classic racism. So there are a lot of comments about the language, right? So what is so bad about saying immigrant versus refugee? So I'm going to read one comment here. Okay, I'm confused. Please don't hate me. I'm just trying to understand. What is the difference between saying mass immigration and there are a lot of immigrants? To me, neither of those things are inherently racist. Stating the fact that X places a lot of immigrants isn't racist, right? I mean, the Duolingo app even says that main source of users in Sweden are immigrants. There's nothing wrong with immigrants. Why would saying immigrants be racist? So I don't necessarily think this guy is automatically a bad person. But firstly, I would say a lot of people said that Duolingo app said immigrants. It didn't say immigrants, it said refugees. It says that on the app. So don't bring that to the argument because it's just not true. So an immigrant is someone who goes to another country seeking maybe a better life, seeking to work there or do anything really. So what I think immigrant specifically means is that there is a high degree of choice involved. It is your choice to leave. You aren't being forced out by either persecution, war, or things like famines. It is your choice. And I think with that choice, there is, I guess, the impression there's a bit of financial stability that you can make this choice. Now, a refugee, of course, like I said, is someone who's forced out. So people coming from Syria or Libya, do you think most of them have a choice? And I will frame it even further, is that economic conditions can mean you don't have a choice either. So you can be forced out because the economy is total garbage. Now, in North Africa, what most people don't talk about, one of the driving forces behind the Arab Spring was income inequality and lack of opportunity for people. High unemployment, right? And of course, in a capitalist system, in poor countries specifically, when the social safety net is bad, literally your choice is, if you don't have a job, you don't work, you don't get money, you're going to go homeless and you can probably die. And again, if you're fleeing those countries because the situation has become even worse, like in Libya, for example, or in Syria, just because you're not being forced out with a gun at your back doesn't mean you can't be a refugee when the awful situation there has created a climate that just isn't survivable, even if that's just an economic issue, rather than something like you're being chased out because you're on a hit list or something. Now, it's like with the Irish immigration thing. I don't know why we frame it like that with the famine. These people were refugees. They were forced out of Ireland because literally there was no food. The population of Ireland is one of the only major countries which reduced since that time because everyone left. But we frame that as Irish immigrants to America. They weren't immigrants. They were refugees. They were fleeing persecution. They were fleeing famine. So again, it's just the narrative we like to paint sometimes. And what I think it does with the Irish as well is it really omits the role of other countries. So with the Irish, Ireland was part of the United Kingdom in that time. The famine was made worse, and people say was basically done on purpose to cleanse Ireland of these groups of people, poor Catholics. And at the very least, the British government didn't really care. They were happy to let it happen. Now, with Syria, specifically Libya as well, British military got involved, destabilised the whole country, and it went to shit after they helped overthrow Gaddafi. Obviously, they were giving a lot of weapons and money to groups who had actually turned out to be Islamic fundamentalists, which didn't help at all. But by framing it as a migrant crisis, you are omitting your role in them becoming refugees. And I think that is just the narrative of oppressors and the powerful to really make it seem like the whole decision is on these people coming here. Why are you coming here, right? Stay in your own country. Make it better. Why are men coming to this country? Stay in Libya. Again, not admitting to what we have done and how we've created these conditions where people have to flee their countries. So if you want to see some more comments, just go onto the video. There have been some long threads and people fighting, which I didn't really read as much. But yeah, those were just some of the more, I guess, bad ones, and some ones I just wanted to respond to. Now, to circle this background, I was actually getting some criticism from people on the left saying, oh, who cares about PewDiePie? Why are you criticising him? It's been done to death and everything. Basically, two things here. PewDiePie is the most popular YouTuber. What he does affects everyone on this platform. Adpocalypse and stuff like that happen because of his actions, and that affects people like me who make content that covers more controversial and political issues. It's not about making money. You need your videos to be monetized to get into the algorithm to grow your channel. If your channel keeps getting demonetized like someone like mine does, most of my videos do, that means YouTube will not recommend it in the algorithm because it's not going to make as much money through ads on it. Because a demonetized logo means that there's not going to be an auction for your videos for various companies pushing their ads. So that is why we criticise people like PewDiePie, just to reveal how bad he is, and hopefully, I know it's hard, but eat into his support and just show him for who he really is. Now, another point is that you kind of have to play the YouTube game. I make videos on popular people, but what I do, and what I like to do, is frame it with an overall argument. So the video was about what PewDiePie said. The video was about that, but it was also about alt-right narratives about migrants versus refugees. I'm talking about the language here. That is what my video is about. You can take that argument away from the video, even if you don't care about the PewDiePie thing, and even if you don't really know who he is or pay attention to him at all. I'm still talking about an important issue and a relevant issue. So I saw a lot of people saying, even people on the left and Marxists and leftists and everything, that it was pointless me making this, give it a rest, stop making videos like this. And again, I'm just saying it helps because you can change people's minds on someone like this while educating them about this phrasing. And what I was happy to see, there was actually a lot of people on the video, especially in the Reddit comments, saying, I never realised it was bad to use this term when I'm talking about refugees. Now I've learned and I will use the proper term. And that's all, you know, I'm happy with that. That's all I wanted to do. That's my response to that sort of criticism. Anyway, let me know what you guys think of the 2 videos I've made now. Let me know what you think of the comments. Let me know what you think of the discussion. If you're on social media, follow me at The Cavernacle on Twitter. That's the main one, but also Facebook and Instagram. Please check out my Reddit. It's where I'm most active. So the subreddit is r/The Cavernacle. Post all my videos there. If you just want to follow my personal Reddit, that is u/TommyCahill1995. If you want, you can check out my Patreon and my WordPress in the description. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.